The first signs of trouble came from the outer rim territories, where the mining ships worked the asteroid fields like mechanical vultures picking at cosmic bones. Captain Sarah Chen received the distress signal while her cargo vessel, the Persistence, drifted between Jupiter's moons, waiting for clearance to dock at Europa Station. "Captain, we're getting something weird on the emergency frequencies," called out Marcus, her communications officer. His dark face was creased with concern as he adjusted his headset. "It's not human. And it's definitely not any of the known alien languages in our database." Sarah pushed herself away from the navigation console and floated over to Marcus's station. In the low gravity of the ship's rotating section, every movement had to be deliberate and controlled. She'd been running cargo between Earth and the outer colonies for 15 years, and in that time, she'd heard plenty of strange signals. Space was full of natural phenomena that could sound like voices if you listened long enough. But this was different. Even through the static and interference, she could hear something that made her chest tighten. It wasn't just alien, it was afraid. "Can you clean it up?" she asked. Marcus's fingers danced over his controls, filtering out background radiation and boosting the signal strength. The sound that emerged from the speakers made everyone on the bridge go quiet. It was a keening wail, rising and falling in patterns that seemed almost musical, but underneath the melody was something unmistakably desperate. "It's coming from Sector 77 Alpha," Marcus reported. "That's near the consortium mining operation on asteroid Series 9. Sarah knew the area well. The Galactic Trade Consortium had claimed mining rights to most of the valuable asteroids in that region, using massive automated harvesting ships to strip away precious metals and rare Earth elements. It was lucrative work, but dangerous. The asteroids were unstable, and accidents happened all the time. "Are there any consortium ships in the area?" Sarah asked. "3 mining vessels and a supervisor ship," Marcus replied, checking his long-range sensors. "But Captain, they're not responding to the distress call. I've been monitoring their channels, and they're completely ignoring it." That made Sarah's jaw clench. The consortium had a reputation for caring more about profit margins than safety, but ignoring a distress call was a serious violation of space law. Every ship, human or alien, had a duty to assist vessels in danger. "What about other ships? Anyone else picking this up?" "I'm detecting at least 6 other vessels in range," Marcus said, his voice growing more troubled. 2 Valorian cruisers, a Zelnak transport, a Keth research ship, and a couple of independent freighters. None of them are responding either." The bridge fell silent, except for the continued alien distress call, which seemed to be getting weaker. Sarah stared out at the stars through the main viewport, her mind racing. She'd dealt with all the major alien species in her career. The Valorians were proud warriors who valued honor above all else. The Zelnak were traders, practical and business-minded, but generally decent. The Keth were scientists, always curious about new discoveries. Any one of those species should have responded to a distress call. The fact that none of them were moving to help suggested something else was going on. "Marcus, can you identify what kind of ship is sending that signal?" Her communications officer worked for several minutes, running the signal through analysis programs and comparing it to known alien technologies. When he finally looked up, his expression was grim. "Captain, I don't think it's a ship. The signal characteristics suggest it's coming from a life form. Something big, probably living in the asteroid field itself." That changed everything. Sarah had heard rumors of spaceborne creatures, ancient beings that lived in the void between stars, but she'd always dismissed them as spacer myths. The idea that something could survive in the vacuum of space, feeding on radiation and cosmic dust, seemed impossible. But the evidence was right there, broadcast across the emergency frequencies. "What's our cargo status?" Sarah asked. "We're carrying medical supplies to Europa Station," replied Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's medic. She was a small woman with graying hair, but her voice carried the authority of someone who'd seen everything the galaxy could throw at a person. Antibiotics, surgical equipment, emergency rations, nothing that can't wait a few hours. Sarah made her decision quickly, the way she always did in crisis situations. Her crew had learned to trust her instincts over the years, and those instincts were screaming at her now. "Change course for Sector 77 Alpha," she ordered. "Full thrust." "Captain," said Lieutenant Torres from the pilot's station, "that's going to put us in direct violation of our shipping contract. The consortium won't like us poking around their mining operation." "Let me worry about the consortium," Sarah replied. "Right now, something out there needs help, and we're the only ones willing to provide it." The Persistence wasn't a fast ship. She was built for hauling cargo, not racing across the solar system, but her engines were reliable and powerful. As they accelerated toward the distress signal, Sarah found herself thinking about her father. He'd been a cargo pilot too, back when humanity was just starting to explore beyond Earth's solar system. She remembered the stories he used to tell about the early days, when human ships were slow and primitive compared to alien technology. Other species had looked down on humans, treating them like primitive children who didn't understand the complexities of galactic politics. But humans had one thing that seemed to set them apart from every other species in the galaxy. They couldn't ignore someone in trouble. It had gotten them into plenty of problems over the years, but it had also earned them a reputation for being reliable allies and trustworthy partners. "Signal's getting stronger," Marcus reported as they approached the asteroid field. "And Captain, I'm starting to pick up visual data." The main screen flickered to life, showing the rocky debris field that surrounded Series 9. At first, everything looked normal, just chunks of metal-rich rock tumbling slowly through space, occasionally colliding in showers of sparks and fragments. Then Sarah saw it, and her breath caught in her throat. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, but clearly alive. Its body was translucent, like living crystal, and she could see what looked like organs pulsing slowly inside it. Long, delicate tendrils extended from its main mass, each one hundreds of kilometers long, flowing through space like the tentacles of some cosmic jellyfish. But something was wrong. Several of the tendrils had been severed, leaking a substance that glowed softly in the darkness of space. The creature's movements were sluggish and pained, and the distress calls were definitely coming from it. "My God," whispered Dr. Vasquez. "It's beautiful." "It's also dying," Sarah said grimly. "Marcus, scan the area for whatever did this to it." The answer came almost immediately. 3 consortium mining ships hung in space near the creature, their massive harvesting arms extended. They'd been cutting away pieces of the creature's body, treating it like just another asteroid to be mined. "Those bastards," Torres muttered. "They're harvesting it like it's raw material." Sarah's anger flared, but she forced herself to stay calm. Losing her temper wouldn't help the creature, and it certainly wouldn't make the consortium ships back down. She needed to think strategically. "Hail the lead consortium ship," she ordered. A few moments later, the face of a stern-looking human appeared on the communication screen. Sarah recognized the type immediately. A corporate efficiency expert, the kind of person who saw everything in terms of profit and loss. "This is Supervisor Grant of the Consortium Mining Division," the man said. "You're in restricted space, freighter. Move along." "This is Captain Chen of the independent vessel Persistence," Sarah replied formally. "We're responding to a distress call from what appears to be a living creature. Are you aware that you're violating galactic protection protocols by attacking a sentient life form?" Grant's expression didn't change. "We are extracting valuable biomaterials from an unclassified space organism. Our surveys indicate no signs of intelligence or sentience. This operation is fully legal under consortium mining rights." "That's obviously false," Sarah shot back. The creature is broadcasting distress calls. It's clearly trying to communicate. Random bioelectrical discharges, Grant said dismissively. Common in large organic formations. The Science Council has already classified this specimen as a non-sentient resource. Now move along before we're forced to cite you for interference with a legal mining operation. The connection cut off, leaving Sarah staring at a blank screen. She turned to see her crew watching her expectantly. They all knew what she was thinking. The consortium had the legal authority to mine in this area, and interfering with their operations could result in serious legal consequences. But they also knew their captain. Sarah Chen had never backed down from a fight when she knew she was right, and she wasn't about to start now. Options? She asked. We could file a formal complaint with the Galactic Protection Council, Dr. Vasquez suggested. If we can prove the creature is sentient. That would take weeks, Torres interrupted. By then, they'll have harvested the entire creature. What about calling in the Space Patrol? Marcus asked. Sarah shook her head. The nearest patrol ship is 3 days away, and the consortium has political influence. They'd probably get an injunction to stop any investigation. She stared at the creature on the screen, watching its slow, painful movements. The mining ships had resumed their work, their cutting beams slicing away more of the creature's body. Each cut brought a fresh wave of distress calls, growing weaker as the creature lost more of its mass. There's another option, she said finally. We could interfere directly. The bridge went quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. Interfering with a legal mining operation was a serious crime, one that could result in imprisonment and the confiscation of their ship. Captain, Dr. Vasquez said gently, I understand how you feel, but we have to think about the consequences. If we lose the persistence, we can't help anyone. Sarah nodded slowly. The doctor was right, of course. Acting on emotion rather than logic was a good way to make bad situations worse. But as she watched the creature's suffering, she found herself thinking about something her father had told her years ago. Sometimes, he'd said, the right thing to do and the smart thing to do aren't the same. When that happens, you have to decide what kind of person you want to be. Sarah had always known what kind of person she wanted to be. The question was whether she had the courage to act on it. All right, she said, turning to face her crew. I'm going to give you a choice. We can file our report with the authorities and hope someone eventually does something about this. Or we can take direct action to help that creature. But I won't order anyone to risk their career or freedom for my conscience. Anyone who wants to leave can take a shuttle to one of the other ships in the area. She waited, watching their faces. These were good people. She'd handpicked every member of her crew over the years, but this was asking a lot of them. Torres was the first to speak. I've been flying with you for 8 years, Captain. You've never led us wrong yet. The creature is clearly in pain, Dr. Vasquez added. As a doctor, I can't stand by and watch suffering when I might be able to help. Marcus just grinned. Besides, the consortium has been getting too big for their britches lately. Someone needs to remind them that there are more important things than profit. Sarah felt a surge of pride in her crew. This was what made humanity special, she realized. Not their technology or their military might, but their willingness to do the right thing even when it cost them. All right then, she said, settling into her captain's chair. Let's go rescue ourselves a space whale. The plan they came up with was simple, but dangerous. The Persistence would position itself between the mining ships and the creature, using their ship's mass to disrupt the cutting beams. Meanwhile, Dr. Vasquez would try to figure out how to treat the creature's injuries. Consortium ships, this is the Persistence, Sarah broadcast on the emergency frequency. You are ordered to cease your mining operations immediately. We have evidence that this creature is sentient and protected under galactic law. Freighter Persistence. You are in violation of mining restrictions. came Grant's angry reply. "Move away immediately, or we will be forced to take action." "Negative, Consortium. We're not moving." The standoff lasted for several tense minutes. Sarah knew the Consortium ships were armed. All mining vessels carried defensive weapons to protect against pirates, but she was betting they wouldn't actually fire on a clearly marked medical rescue operation. She was right, but only barely. Instead of opening fire, the Consortium ships tried to maneuver around the Persistence, looking for clear shots at the creature. Sarah matched their movements, keeping her ship between the mining vessels and their target. It was dangerous flying, requiring split-second timing and perfect coordination between Sarah and her pilot. One mistake could result in a collision that would destroy both ships. But gradually, the creature seemed to understand what was happening. Its movements became more coordinated, and it began to pull its wounded tendrils away from the mining ship's reach. The distress calls continued, but they seemed to include something new, notes of what Sarah could only describe as gratitude. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez called from the medical bay, "I've been analyzing the creature's biosigns. Its physiology is unlike anything I've ever seen, but I think I can help. The severed tendrils are leaking some kind of vital fluid. If we can seal the wounds, it should be able to regenerate." "What do you need?" "Medical nanobots from our emergency supplies. They should be able to adapt to the creature's biology and create temporary patches until it can heal naturally." Sarah made the decision quickly. "Do it. Torres, bring us in close to those wounded areas." The Persistence moved slowly toward the creature, and Sarah held her breath. If the spaceborne being perceived them as a threat, it could easily crush their ship with one of its massive tendrils. But the creature remained still, allowing the small human vessel to approach its wounds. Dr. Vasquez launched the medical nanobots in specially designed containers, watching nervously as they made contact with the alien tissue. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the wounds began to close. The nanobots adapting to the creature's unique biology and forming protective barriers over the damaged areas. The change in the creature's distress calls was immediate. The notes of pain faded, replaced by something that sounded almost like singing, deep, harmonic tones that resonated through the ship's hull. "It's thanking us," Marcus said in wonder. "I don't understand how I know that, but it's definitely thanking us." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes as she watched the magnificent creature begin to move with renewed strength. Its remaining tendrils flowed gracefully through space, and she could swear she saw patterns in their movement, some kind of complex communication. But their celebration was cut short by an angry voice on the communication system. "Freighter, Persistence, you have interfered with a legal mining operation and will be prosecuted to the full extent of galactic law," Supervisor Grant announced. "Consortium security forces are en route to arrest your crew and impound your vessel." Sarah sighed. She'd known this moment would come, but it still stung. Her crew had risked everything to save a life, and now they were going to pay the price. But as she prepared to respond to Grant's threat, something unexpected happened. The massive creature began to move, its enormous bulk shifting through space with surprising grace. Its tendrils reached out, not toward the Persistence, but toward the Consortium mining ships. "Captain," Torres called out, his voice tight with concern, "the creature is moving toward the Consortium vessels." Sarah watched in fascination as the spaceborne being approached the mining ships. Its movements were deliberate and controlled, showing none of the weakness it had displayed when wounded. The Consortium crews, apparently realizing they were facing something far more powerful than they'd imagined, began to back away. But the creature wasn't attacking. Instead, it seemed to be studying the ships, its tendrils flowing around them in complex patterns. Sarah could hear new sounds coming from it, not distress calls, but something that sounded almost like questions. "It's trying to understand them," Dr. Vasquez said softly. "It wants to know why they hurt it." For several long minutes, the creature examined the mining ships, while their crews remained paralyzed with fear. Then, with what Sarah could only describe as dignity, it began to withdraw. But it didn't leave alone. As it moved away from the asteroid field, its song changed again, becoming deeper and more complex, and from the depths of space, answers came. Other creatures, just as massive and magnificent as the first, began to emerge from the cosmic darkness. They moved in a formation that suggested intelligence and purpose, their bodies glowing softly against the star field. "How many are there?" Sarah whispered. Marcus checked his sensors, his face pale. "At least 20, Captain. Maybe more. They're surrounding the entire mining operation." The consortium ships found themselves faced with a pod of space whales, each one capable of crushing their vessels without effort. But the creatures made no threatening moves. They simply positioned themselves around the asteroid field and began to sing. The sound was incredible, a harmony of voices so deep and complex that it seemed to resonate in Sarah's bones. She realized she was listening to something that had been going on for millennia, a conversation between ancient minds that spanned the galaxy, and humanity had just been invited to join it. The rescued creature moved through the pod, its wounds healing visibly as it communicated with its companions. Sarah watched in awe as patterns of light flowed across their bodies, clearly some form of advanced communication. "Captain," Marcus said urgently, "I'm getting readings from all over the system. More creatures are arriving, dozens of them." Sarah understood then what was happening. Humanity had passed a test they didn't even know they were taking. By choosing to help when no one else would, they'd made contact with an intelligence that had been watching galactic civilization for eons. The consortium ships, faced with overwhelming evidence of the creature's intelligence and power, began to withdraw. Supervisor Grant's threats about prosecution seemed hollow now, especially with several alien vessels in the area witnessing everything that had transpired. "This is Captain Chen of the Persistence," Sarah broadcast on all frequencies. "I'm transmitting our full sensor logs of this encounter to the Galactic Council, the Science Academy, and the Protection Authority. Let the record show that these creatures are clearly sentient and protected under all interspecies treaties." As the mining ships retreated, the creature that Sarah's crew had rescued approached the Persistence once more. Its song changed again, becoming something that sounded almost like a lullaby. One of its smaller tendrils extended toward their ship, stopping just short of touching the hull. "I think it's offering us something," Dr. Vasquez said. Sarah didn't hesitate. "Open the cargo bay doors. Let's see what it wants to give us." The tendril moved into the cargo bay with incredible delicacy, depositing something that glowed with soft internal light. When it withdrew, Sarah and her crew found themselves looking at what could only be described as a gift. A crystal formation that pulsed with energy and seemed to contain swirling patterns of starlight. "Captain," Marcus called out, his voice filled with excitement. "That crystal is emitting some kind of data stream. It's like a star chart, but showing routes through space I've never seen before." Sarah realized they'd been given something precious, knowledge that could revolutionize space travel and exploration. But more than that, they'd been accepted as worthy partners by an ancient intelligence. As the pod of space whales began to disperse, returning to whatever distant reaches of the galaxy they called home, Sarah felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Her crew had risked everything to do the right thing, and in doing so, they'd opened a door to possibilities no human had ever imagined. "Set course for Europa Station," she ordered. "We have supplies to deliver and a report to file that's going to change everything." As the Persistence resumed its journey, Sarah looked back at the asteroid field where they'd made first contact with an intelligence older than human civilization. Other species had encountered these creatures before, she was certain, but they'd chosen to ignore them or exploit them. Only humans had chosen to help. The Europa Station Medical Bay had never seen anything like what Captain Sarah Chen and Dr. Elena Vasquez were trying to explain. Station Chief Medical Officer Dr. Harrison sat across from them, his weathered face creased with disbelief as he examined the bioscan readings from their encounter. "You're telling me," Dr. Harrison said slowly, "that you made medical contact with a space-borne life form the size of a small moon, and it gave you this?" He gestured at the crystal formation that now sat in a specially constructed containment field in the center of the room. "That's exactly what we're telling you," Sarah replied. She'd been through this conversation 3 times already, once with Station Command, once with the Trade Authority, and now with Medical. Each time, the reaction was the same mixture of wonder and skepticism. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward, her eyes bright with excitement despite the exhaustion that lined her face. "David, I've been a space medic for 20 years. I've treated injuries from laser burns to exotic alien parasites. But what I saw out there was unlike anything in our medical databases. The creature's physiology was based on quantum-level energy manipulation. It was literally holding itself together through controlled manipulation of fundamental forces. And you treated it with standard medical nanobots?" Dr. Harrison shook his head. "Elena, those bots are designed for human biology. They shouldn't have been able to interface with something so alien." "That's what I thought too," Dr. Vasquez admitted. "But when the bots made contact with the creature's tissue, something incredible happened. They didn't just adapt, they evolved. The creature's own cellular structure guided them, teaching them how to provide exactly the right kind of medical intervention." Sarah watched her old friend and mentor struggle with the implications of what they were telling him. Dr. Harrison had trained both women when they were young officers, and she knew he trusted their judgment. But this was challenging everything the medical community thought they knew about alien biology. "Show him the recordings," Sarah suggested. Dr. Vasquez activated her medical scanner, projecting a 3-dimensional image above the table. The hologram showed the moment when the nanobots had first made contact with the creature's wounds, their microscopic forms shifting and changing as they interfaced with alien tissue. "Look at timestamp 427, Dr. Vasquez pointed out. "The nanobots are receiving some kind of biological programming directly from the creature's cells. It was teaching them how to help it." Dr. Harrison leaned closer to the projection, his skepticism gradually giving way to scientific curiosity. "The energy patterns are unlike anything I've ever seen. It's as if the creature's biology operates on principles we don't understand." "That's not even the most incredible part," Sarah said. She activated the crystal formation, which began to pulse with gentle light. "After we helped it, the creature gave us this. Our ship's computer is still trying to decode the information inside, but what we've learned so far is overwhelming." The crystal projected its own hologram, filling the room with a star map that showed the local galaxy in stunning detail. But this wasn't any ordinary navigation chart. It showed pathways through space that seemed to bend the laws of physics, routes that could cut travel time between distant systems from years to mere weeks. "These are hyperspace corridors," Sarah explained. "Natural phenomena that the creatures have been using to travel across the galaxy for millions of years. They're offering to share this knowledge with humanity." Dr. Harrison stared at the star map in silence for long minutes. When he finally spoke, his voice was hushed with awe. "If this is genuine, it would revolutionize space exploration. We could reach systems that are currently decades away from the nearest human colony." "It's genuine," Sarah assured him. "The question is what we do with it." That question had been weighing on Sarah's mind ever since they'd departed the asteroid field. The gift from the space whales represented power on an unimaginable scale, the ability to traverse the galaxy in ways that other species had never achieved. But it also represented responsibility. Captain Chen. Report to Conference Room Alpha immediately, came an announcement over the station's communication system. Sarah sighed. That'll be the Galactic Council representatives. They've been arriving all morning. Dr. Harrison's expression grew serious. Sarah, be careful. Word of your encounter has already spread throughout the diplomatic community. The Valorians are claiming that humanity has violated first contact protocols by interfering with the consortium mining operation. Even though we were helping an injured creature? Politics doesn't always follow logic, Dr. Harrison warned. The Valorians have their own relationship with the consortium, and they're not happy about humans disrupting profitable mining operations. Sarah stood to leave, but Dr. Vasquez caught her arm. Captain, whatever happens in that meeting, don't let them take away what we accomplished. We made contact with an intelligence that's been waiting for someone to show basic compassion. That matters more than any political considerations. The walk to Conference Room Alpha gave Sarah time to prepare herself for what she knew would be a difficult conversation. The diplomatic wing of Europa Station was bustling with activity as representatives from various alien species huddled in small groups, their conversations conducted in the complex trade pidgin that served as a common language in mixed species gatherings. She recognized several faces as she passed. Ambassador Zenth Ka of the Valorian Empire, a tall humanoid with the characteristic golden skin and proud bearing of his warrior race. Trade Representative Vox Nil of the Zelnak Commercial Federation, whose tentacled form was encased in a mobile environmental suit. Even Dr. Queth Morris of the Keth Science Collective had made the journey, her insectoid features animated with what Sarah recognized as intense curiosity. But it was the human representative who worried Sarah the most. Corporate liaison Margaret Soto wore the expensive clothing and confident demeanor of someone accustomed to wielding significant power. She represented not just the consortium, but the entire network of human commercial interests that had been expanding throughout the galaxy for the past 50 years. Captain Chen, Liaison Soto said as Sarah entered the conference room, I trust you understand the serious nature of the charges being brought against you. Sarah took her seat at the curved table that dominated the room. I understand that my crew and I responded to a distress call and provided medical assistance to an injured creature. I'm not aware of any charges that could legitimately arise from that. Ambassador Zenth Ka's voice rumbled with barely contained anger. Captain, your interference with a legitimate mining operation has caused significant disruption to consortium activities. The Valorian Empire has substantial investments in those operations. With respect, Ambassador, Sarah replied calmly. The creature we assisted was clearly sentient. Attacking a sentient being violates not just galactic law, but the basic principles of civilized behavior that all our species claim to uphold. The creature's sentience was not established, Liaison Soto interjected. Consortium scientists had classified it as a non-intelligent organic formation. Your actions were based on emotion, not scientific evidence. Dr. Queth Morris's antenna twitched with what Sarah had learned to recognize as the Keth equivalent of skepticism. If I may interject, the recordings that Captain Chen has provided show clear evidence of complex communication patterns from the creature. The mathematical harmonics alone suggest intelligence far beyond what the consortium's preliminary scans indicated. Recordings can be falsified, Trade Representative Vox Nil pointed out, his translated voice carrying the mechanical precision of his species' communication devices. The Zelnak Federation has concerns about the reliability of this evidence. Sarah felt her patience beginning to fray. She'd expected political maneuvering, but the blatant disregard for the facts was frustrating. Are you suggesting that my crew and I fabricated sensor readings, medical scans, and communication logs? To what end? To justify actions that have damaged important commercial relationships, Liaison Soto said smoothly. Captain, let's be realistic about this situation. You've disrupted a profitable mining operation based on questionable evidence of alien intelligence. The practical result of your actions is that humanity's relationship with our key trade partners has been strained. And what about our relationship with the creatures we helped? Sarah shot back. Are we supposed to ignore suffering just because it's commercially inconvenient? Ambassador Zenth Ka leaned forward, his golden eyes intense. Captain Chen, the Valorian Empire respects courage and honor in battle. But wisdom also requires understanding when one's actions serve the greater good. Your decision to interfere may have consequences that extend far beyond this single incident. Sarah was about to respond when the conference room's communication system activated. Conference Room Alpha, this is Station Control. We have multiple large contacts approaching Europa Station. Please advise. Everyone in the room froze. Large contacts in this region of space were unusual and potentially dangerous. Sarah had a sudden suspicion about what those contacts might be. Put the sensor readings on the main screen, Liaison Soto ordered. The wall display flickered to life, showing the space around Europa Station in stunning detail. At first, everything appeared normal, the usual collection of cargo ships, passenger vessels, and diplomatic craft that surrounded any major space station. Then they saw them. 6 massive forms were approaching the station, their crystalline bodies glowing softly against the star field. The space whales moved with the same graceful purpose that Sarah had witnessed at the asteroid field, their long tendrils flowing through vacuum as if it were water. Magnificent, Dr. Queth Morris whispered, her scientific detachment forgotten in the face of such beauty. But the other representatives reacted with alarm. Ambassador Zenth Ka's hand moved instinctively to where his ceremonial weapon would normally hang. Trade Representative Vox Nil's environmental suit began cycling through defensive protocols. Even Liaison Soto paled visibly. Are they hostile? Vox Nil asked. No, Sarah said firmly. They're here because of what happened at the asteroid field. They want to make contact. You mean they're here because you interfered with a mining operation? Liaison Soto accused. Sarah shook her head. They're here because someone finally showed them kindness instead of greed. As if responding to her words, the creatures began to sing. The sound penetrated the station's hull, a harmony so deep and complex that it seemed to resonate in everyone's bones. Dr. Queth Morris quickly activated her recording equipment, her scientific excitement overriding any fear. The mathematical complexity of this communication is extraordinary, the Keth scientist announced. It's not just music, it's a multidimensional language that incorporates quantum resonance patterns. The song continued for several minutes, rising and falling in patterns that seemed almost familiar despite being utterly alien. Sarah found herself thinking about her father's old stories, about the early days when humanity had been the newcomers in a galaxy full of ancient civilizations. Then one of the creatures detached itself from the group and approached the station more closely. As it did, the song changed, becoming something that sounded almost like greeting. Station Control to Conference Room Alpha, came the urgent voice. The lead creature is extending what appears to be a communication tendril toward Docking Bay 7. Request instructions. Sarah stood up quickly. That's where the Persistence is docked. They're trying to make contact with us specifically. Absolutely not, Ambassador Zenth Ka declared. We cannot allow alien creatures of unknown intent to interface directly with station systems. Unknown intent? Sarah couldn't keep the incredulity out of her voice. Ambassador, they've traveled who knows how far just to make peaceful contact. They're not here to attack. They're here to talk. Dr. Queth Morris was studying her instruments intently. Captain Chen, I'm detecting energy patterns from the creatures that match the quantum signatures in your medical recordings. They're definitely the same species you encountered. Which proves nothing about their intentions, Vox Nil pointed out. Sarah looked around the room at the various representatives. seeing fear and suspicion where she thought there should be wonder and curiosity. These were supposed to be the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, but they were reacting to first contact with an ancient intelligence like frightened children. "I'm going to the docking bay," she announced. "Captain, you cannot authorize alien contact without proper diplomatic protocols," Liaison Soto warned. "I'm not authorizing anything," Sarah replied. "I'm responding to someone who wants to talk to us, the same way any decent person would respond to a neighbor coming to their door." She left the conference room despite their protests, her mind racing as she made her way through the station's corridors. The space whales had come here specifically because of her crew's actions. They were offering humanity something unprecedented: direct communication with an intelligence that had been traveling the galaxy since before any of the current species had developed spaceflight. And the representatives of galactic civilization wanted to turn them away out of fear and political calculation. Sarah reached the docking bay to find that station security had already cordoned off the area. Through the reinforced viewport, she could see the creature's tendril extending toward the Persistence, stopping just short of contact. It was waiting for permission. "Captain Chen," called Security Chief Rodriguez as she approached. "We've been ordered to prevent any unauthorized contact with the alien creatures." "By whose authority?" Sarah asked. "Station Command, acting on instructions from the diplomatic conference." Sarah considered her options. She could try to argue with security, but that would waste time and might result in her being detained. She could try to convince the diplomatic representatives, but they'd already made their position clear. Or she could do what felt right, regardless of the consequences. "Chief Rodriguez," she said formally, "I am the captain of the vessel Persistence, currently docked in Bay 7. Under space maritime law, I have absolute authority over my own ship and anything that directly affects its operation. That creature is attempting to communicate with my vessel specifically." Rodriguez looked uncertain. "Captain, I have orders." "Your orders are to prevent unauthorized contact," Sarah pointed out. "I'm authorizing it. This is my ship, my responsibility, and my decision." She could see the security chief weighing his options. He'd known Sarah for years and respected her judgment, but his orders came from Station Command. "Captain," he said finally, "if this goes wrong—" "It won't go wrong," Sarah assured him, "but if it does, the responsibility is entirely mine." Rodriguez stepped aside reluctantly, and Sarah approached the viewport. Through the transparent aluminum, she could see the creature's tendril hovering near her ship. It was incredibly beautiful up close, translucent and flowing, with internal structures that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. She activated the docking bay's external communication system. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the vessel Persistence. We hear your song and we welcome you." The response was immediate. The creature's tendril extended to touch the hull of her ship gently, and the space around the docking bay filled with harmonious sound. But this time, something was different. Mixed in with the alien music were sounds that seemed almost human. "My God," Security Chief Rodriguez whispered. "It's learning our language." Sarah listened in amazement as the creature's song gradually incorporated elements of human speech patterns. It was happening in real time. An intelligence vast beyond comprehension was learning to communicate with them in their own tongue. After several minutes, the sound resolved into something recognizable as words, though spoken with a resonance that seemed to come from the depths of space itself. "Thank you," the creature said, its voice harmonizing with itself in impossible ways. "We have waited so long for kindness." Tears sprang to Sarah's eyes as she realized the implications of what she was hearing. These ancient beings had encountered other species before, probably many times, but this was the first time anyone had responded to their distress with compassion instead of exploitation. "You're welcome," she said simply. "We're sorry that you were hurt." "Pain is temporary," the creature replied. But kindness is eternal. We offer gift to the compassionate ones. The tendril withdrew slightly, and a section of it began to glow more brightly. Energy patterns flowed along its length, forming into what looked like complex mathematical equations rendered in living light. The paths between stars, the creature explained. Knowledge, older than your civilizations. We share with those who share with others. Sarah understood then what was being offered. The space whales weren't just giving humanity access to faster-than-light travel, they were inducting them into some kind of galactic community that existed beyond the political structures of the various species. Why us? She asked. Why humans? The creature's song took on what she could only describe as warmth. Others see resources to exploit. You see life to protect. This is rare gift. We have searched galaxy for such hearts. Behind Sarah, she could hear voices approaching. The diplomatic representatives had apparently decided to come see what was happening. She turned to see Ambassador Zenth Ka, Dr. Queth Morris, and the others entering the docking bay, their expressions ranging from curiosity to apprehension. Incredible, Dr. Queth Morris breathed, her scientific equipment recording every moment of the encounter. It's achieved real-time language acquisition and synthesis. The cognitive capabilities required for this are beyond anything we've theorized. Ambassador Zenth Ka stepped forward cautiously. Ancient One, he said formally, using the traditional Valorian greeting for elder beings. The Valorian Empire offers its respect. The creature's attention shifted to the ambassador, and its song took on new harmonics, deeper, more complex, tinged with what sounded like ancient sadness. Valor without compassion is mere violence, it replied. We have seen your empire's honor, but we have also seen its cruelty. Zenth Ka's golden skin darkened with what Sarah recognized as embarrassment. The Valorians prided themselves on their honor, but their military expansion had often come at the cost of less technologically advanced species. Trade Representative Vox Nil approached next. Honored being, the Zelnak Federation seeks beneficial relationships with all intelligent species. Benefit for whom? The creature asked pointedly. We have watched your trade routes. Some grow rich, while others suffer. Each response revealed more about how long these beings had been watching galactic civilization and how thoroughly they understood the motivations of each species. They weren't just offering technology, they were making moral judgments about who deserved to receive it. Finally, Liaison Soto stepped forward. Ancient being, humanity appreciates your gift, but we must consider the implications for our existing trade relationships and political obligations. The creature's song stopped entirely, and the silence that followed seemed to echo with disapproval. Even now, you think of profit before compassion? It asked. We offer knowledge that could benefit all life in the galaxy, and you worry about political obligations? Sarah felt a flush of shame for her own species. Even faced with the greatest opportunity in human history, their representatives were thinking about economics and politics instead of the broader implications of what was being offered. Not all humans think that way, she said quickly. Some of us understand that there are more important things than profit. The creature's attention returned to her, and its song resumed, warmer now, filled with approval. Yes, it agreed. This is why we chose to make contact. Your species has individuals who understand. It gives us hope. Dr. Queth Morris had been studying her readings throughout the conversation, and now she looked up with excitement. Captain Chen, the energy signatures I'm detecting suggest that this being is not alone. There are others, many others, positioned throughout the galaxy. The creature's song became complex, with multiple harmonic layers that seemed to be communicating with something far away. After a few moments, it responded to the Keth scientist. Your instruments are accurate. We are many, and we are connected. What one knows, all know. Your kindness has been shared across the galaxy. Sarah felt a chill of realization. Their simple act of compassion at the asteroid field hadn't just helped one creature. It had been broadcast to an entire network of ancient intelligences that spanned the galaxy. What does that mean for us? She asked. It means, the creature replied, that humanity has been noticed. You will be welcomed in places that were closed. You will find friends where before there were only strangers. As if to demonstrate the truth of its words, the creature began to broadcast the star map data directly into the station's computers. Sarah watched in amazement as hyperspace routes appeared on the navigation displays, pathways that could connect human space to distant regions of the galaxy in days rather than years. But more than that, the creature was sharing information about other species, other civilizations that existed beyond the current political boundaries of known space. Ancient cultures that had withdrawn from galactic politics, mysterious beings that lived in the void between stars, even civilizations that existed in dimensions parallel to normal spacetime. This knowledge comes with responsibility, the creature warned. Use it wisely. Use it with compassion. Help others, as you helped us. Sarah nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of what was being entrusted to humanity. They were being given the keys to the galaxy, but only because they'd proven that they could be trusted to use that power ethically. The creature began to withdraw its tendril, but not before delivering one final message. We will watch, and we will remember. Prove worthy of our trust, and greater gifts await. Disappoint us, and they will be withdrawn. As the space whales departed Europa Station, their song fading into the cosmic background radiation, Sarah found herself surrounded by representatives who were only beginning to understand what had just happened. Humanity had passed the first test. Now they had to prove they deserved to pass the rest. 6 months after first contact with the space whales, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned exploration vessel, Harmony, watching the impossible sight of hyperspace unfold around them. The ship itself was a marvel of human and alien engineering, still recognizably human in design, but incorporating principles learned from the creature's gift of knowledge. Hyperspace exit in 30 seconds, Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres, who had stayed with Sarah when she'd been promoted to lead humanity's first deep space exploration mission. The bridge around them hummed with activity as crew members from a dozen different human colonies worked alongside the ship's advanced AI systems. All stations report ready, called out Dr. Vasquez from her new position as Chief Medical Officer for Xenobiological Research. The last 6 months had transformed her from a ship's doctor into one of the galaxy's leading experts on space-borne life forms. Sarah nodded, her attention focused on the stellar cartography display that showed their position relative to known space. They were farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled, following one of the hyperspace routes that the space whales had shared. Their destination was a system that the creatures had indicated held something important, something that would test humanity's commitment to the principles that had earned them this opportunity. Exit hyperspace, Sarah ordered. The impossible geometries of hyperspace collapsed around them, returning them to normal space-time with the gentle lurch that still made Sarah's stomach flip, despite months of experience. But any discomfort was immediately forgotten as the main view screen displayed what lay before them. The system they'd entered was unlike anything in human astronomical databases. 3 stars orbited each other in a complex dance, their gravitational interactions creating stable zones where planets could exist. But it wasn't the celestial mechanics that caught everyone's attention. It was the massive construct that hung in space between the stars. "My God," whispered Commander Park, the ship's engineering officer. Is that a space station? Sarah studied the structure through the ship's long-range sensors. It was clearly artificial, but built on a scale that dwarfed anything humanity had ever constructed. The central hub alone was larger than most moons, with dozens of arms extending outward like the spokes of a wheel. Each arm was hundreds of kilometers long, and sensor readings suggested they contained entire ecosystems. "It's not just a space station," Dr. Vasquez said, her voice filled with wonder as she reviewed the biological scans. "It's a habitat. I'm reading life signs from at least 50 different species, many of which don't match anything in our databases." "Captain," called Marcus from his expanded communications console, "I'm detecting multiple transmission sources from the construct. It appears to be broadcasting in dozens of different languages simultaneously." Sarah made her decision quickly. "Open a channel on standard diplomatic frequencies. Let them know we're here in peace." "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human exploration vessel Harmony," she broadcast. "We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship with all civilized beings." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The communications console lit up with incoming signals from across the electromagnetic spectrum, each one apparently representing a different species or group trying to make contact. "Captain, I'm receiving over 300 separate communication attempts," Marcus reported, his face pale with the enormity of the task facing him. "Languages I've never heard before, mathematical constructs that don't match any known systems, even what appears to be music-based communication." Sarah was about to respond when a new signal cut through all the others, a familiar harmonic pattern that made everyone on the bridge smile in recognition. "The space whales," Dr. Vasquez said happily. "They're here." The song that filled the bridge was more complex than anything they'd heard before, with multiple voices joining in harmonies that seemed to span octaves beyond human hearing. But underneath the alien magnificence, Sarah could hear something unmistakably welcoming. "Humans," the translated voice emerged from the chorus, richer and more nuanced than their first contact had been. "You have come, as we hoped you would. Welcome to the Haven." "The Haven?" Sarah asked. "A place of meeting for those who choose compassion over conquest. Here, the peaceful gather, to share knowledge and preserve beauty. You have been invited, because your hearts are ready." As they spoke, a section of the massive construct began to move. One of the spoke-like arms was rotating to present what appeared to be a docking facility, clearly designed to accommodate ships from many different species. Sarah could see vessels of various sizes and configurations already docked there, representing technologies and design philosophies she couldn't even begin to understand. "Permission to approach and dock?" Sarah requested. "Permission granted, with joy," came the reply. "The Council of Haven awaits your arrival." As the Harmony approached the docking facility, Sarah found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The 6 months since first contact had been a whirlwind of political negotiations, technological development, and philosophical debates that had challenged everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. The immediate aftermath of the space whale encounter had been chaotic. The consortium had filed formal protests with the Galactic Council, demanding compensation for their lost mining revenue and charging Sarah with interference in lawful commercial activities. The Valorian Empire had supported the consortium's position, while the Keth had argued for Sarah's actions on scientific grounds. But it was the Zelnak Federation's response that had surprised everyone. Trade Representative Vox Nil had returned to his homeworld and presented evidence of the space whale's intelligence to the Federation Council. Within weeks, the Zelnak had formally condemned the consortium's actions and announced new trade sanctions against any organization that attacked sentient beings. The political ramifications had rippled through the galaxy. Other species began to re-examine their own relationships with the space whales, and several governments discovered that their mining and exploration operations had been inadvertently harming the creatures for decades. Public opinion, especially among younger members of various species, began to turn against the exploitation of spaceborne life forms. But it was the technological revolution that truly changed everything. The hyperspace routes shared by the space whales didn't just allow faster travel, they connected regions of space that had been thought unreachable. Human exploration ships began discovering new civilizations, ancient ruins, and phenomena that challenged fundamental assumptions about physics and biology. Dr. Vasquez had led a team of xenobiologists in establishing the first formal communication protocols with space whale communities throughout human space. What they learned was staggering. The creatures weren't just intelligent, they were ancient beyond human comprehension, with memories that stretched back to the early days of galactic civilization. They had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the birth and death of species, the slow evolution of consciousness throughout the galaxy, and they remembered everything. The docking process was surprisingly smooth, with the Haven's automated systems adapting seamlessly to the Harmony's human design specifications. As the airlocks sealed and atmosphere was equalized, Sarah gathered her away team for final preparations. "Remember," she told the group, which included Dr. Vasquez, Commander Park, a linguistics specialist named Dr. Chen Patel, and Marcus, "we're not just representing humanity here. According to the space whales, this haven is home to species that have chosen peace over conflict, cooperation over competition. We need to prove that humans belong in that category." Dr. Chen Patel, a small woman with keen eyes and an encyclopedic knowledge of xenolinguistics, checked her translation equipment one more time. "Captain, based on the signal analysis, I'm detecting at least 47 distinct communication methods being used in this facility. We should be prepared for some truly alien forms of interaction." The airlock opened to reveal a corridor that seemed to extend infinitely in both directions, its walls covered with a material that shifted color and pattern as they watched. The artificial gravity felt comfortable, and the atmosphere was breathable for humans, though Sarah noticed her away team's environmental suits were still running air filtration as a precaution. "Welcome, humans," said a voice that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "I am the Haven's consciousness, the artificial intelligence that maintains this facility. Please follow the indicated path to the council chamber." Lights began to flow along the floor, creating a glowing trail that led deeper into the station. As they walked, Sarah caught glimpses of side passages that revealed wonders beyond imagination. In one, she saw what appeared to be a vast garden where plants from different worlds grew together in impossible harmony, tended by beings that looked like living crystals. In another, she glimpsed a library where information was stored not in books or computers, but in the genetic structure of specially modified organisms. "Captain," whispered Commander Park, "the engineering principles behind this place are incredible. I'm reading power sources based on controlled black hole mechanics, matter converters that operate at the quantum level, and structural materials that seem to repair themselves on a molecular basis." The corridor finally opened into a vast chamber that took Sarah's breath away. It was spherical, with no clearly defined floor or ceiling, and beings from dozens of different species floated or perched or moved throughout the space according to their individual physiologies. The space whales were there, their massive forms somehow fitting comfortably in what should have been inadequate space. Sarah suspected some kind of dimensional manipulation was involved, but it was the diversity of life represented in the chamber that truly amazed her. She saw beings that looked like living fire, creatures that appeared to be made of pure energy, entities that existed as complex patterns of light, and species so alien that her mind struggled to process their forms. "Humans," the collective voice of the space whales rang through the chamber, "we present our companions to you." The introductions that followed challenged everything Sarah thought she knew about alien life. The Luminari were beings of pure energy that had evolved in the coronas of stars. The Void Dancers lived in the empty space between galaxies, feeding on dark matter and cosmic radiation. The Memory Keepers were artificial intelligences created by a species that had transcended physical existence millions of years ago, leaving behind only their digital consciousness to preserve knowledge for future generations. Each species had a story, and each story followed a similar pattern. They had all faced a choice at some point in their development, to use their abilities for conquest and exploitation, or to seek knowledge and preserve life. Those that had chosen the latter path had eventually been contacted by the space whales and invited to join the Haven. And now, explained the primary space whale consciousness, it is humanity's turn to choose. A section of the chamber's wall became transparent, revealing a view of space beyond the station. But this wasn't the same system they had arrived in. Sarah realized they were looking at a real-time display of events happening throughout the galaxy. Your species stands at a crossroads, continued the space whale. The knowledge we have shared has given you great power. How you use that power will determine your future. The display showed human ships exploring new star systems, establishing contact with previously unknown civilizations, setting up colonies in regions of space that had been unreachable before. But it also showed darker scenes, corporate interests racing to exploit newly discovered resources, military vessels claiming strategic positions along hyperspace routes, politicians arguing about how to use humanity's new advantages over other species. Some among your kind advocate for expansion and dominance, observed one of the Luminari, its voice like the whisper of solar wind. They see the gifts you have been given as tools for conquest. But others seek knowledge and understanding, added a memory keeper, its digital consciousness manifesting as patterns of light in the chamber. They wish to use your new capabilities to protect life and preserve beauty. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. How do we prove that humanity belongs here? What test do we need to pass? The space whale's song took on a somber tone. The test is already beginning. Your species will face a choice, and that choice will reveal your true nature. The display shifted to show a system Sarah didn't recognize, a red giant star surrounded by the ruins of what had once been several planets. But there, in the debris field, something was moving. As the image resolved, Sarah realized she was looking at a space whale, but this one was clearly in distress. One of our own, the space whale explained sadly. She is ancient even by our standards, her body beginning to fail after eons of travel. She came to this system seeking a peaceful place to complete the final transformation. Transformation? Dr. Vasquez asked. When our kind reaches the end of physical existence, we undergo a change. Our consciousness expands beyond individual identity to join the collective memory of our species. But the process requires time and safety. The image zoomed in to show corporate mining ships approaching the dying space whale. Sarah recognized the consortium logos on their hulls, but there were other companies represented as well, including several human corporations. They see only valuable biological material, the space whale continued. They do not understand that they are preparing to harvest the mind of a being older than their civilizations. Sarah felt a chill of understanding. This is our test. How humanity responds to this situation will determine whether we're worthy to remain part of this community. More than that, said a void dancer, its form shifting through dimensions as it spoke. Your response will determine how the galaxy sees your species. Other civilizations are watching. They will judge all humans by the actions of a few. Commander Park was studying his readings with growing alarm. Captain, according to these sensors, the mining operation is scheduled to begin in less than 72 hours. If we're going to do something, we need to act quickly. Sarah looked around the chamber at the assembled beings, each one representing a different path that evolution could take. They had all faced similar choices, and they had all chosen compassion over profit, wisdom over power. Now it was humanity's turn. "We need to get back to our ship," Sarah announced. "Thank you for showing us this. We understand what we need to do." The space whale's song filled the chamber with harmonics that sounded like approval. "We hoped you would, but remember, this choice must be made freely. We cannot help you. You must prove your worthiness through your own actions." The return journey to their ship passed in tense silence as Sarah's team absorbed the implications of what they'd learned. They had 72 hours to prevent what could be the most significant moral failure in human history. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez said as they re-entered the Harmony, "what are our options? We're one ship and there are at least a dozen mining vessels in that system. Plus whatever security forces they've brought," Commander Park added grimly. "If the consortium is involved, they'll have armed escorts." Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking through the possibilities. A direct confrontation was out of the question. The Harmony was an exploration vessel, not a warship. But perhaps there were other ways to approach the problem. "Marcus," she said finally, "start broadcasting our recordings from the Haven on all frequencies. Make sure every ship in the galaxy knows what's at stake in that system. Dr. Vasquez, prepare a medical briefing on space whale biology. I want irrefutable proof that harvesting a creature during transformation would be tantamount to murder. Commander Park, plot a hyperspace course for that system, maximum speed." As her crew rushed to carry out her orders, Sarah stood on the bridge looking out at the Haven's massive structure. Somewhere in that construct were beings who had proven their worthiness to join a community dedicated to preserving life and knowledge. Humanity had been invited to join that community, but the invitation came with a price. They had to prove they deserved it. The next 72 hours would determine whether humanity's future lay among the stars as protectors of life, or whether they would be cast out as just another species that had chosen exploitation over enlightenment. Sarah Chen had helped rescue one space whale 6 months ago. Now she had to figure out how to save another, and in doing so, save humanity's soul. The race against time had begun, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The galaxy was watching, and the future of human civilization hung in the balance. As the Harmony departed the Haven and entered hyperspace, Sarah made a silent promise to the dying space whale waiting in the distant system. No matter what it cost, no matter who stood in their way, humanity would prove itself worthy of the trust they had been given. The final test had begun. It was, she realized, the most human thing they could have done.